Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new pro-revenge stories. The first story is called, Shouldn't Tow Our Car. This happened about 8 years ago. My mum and I decided to go out to lunch one day. We drove until we found a lot that's business did not appear to be open at the time. My mum pulls into the lot and parks in a spot. We both walk over and investigate the business's window. It was a pastry shop. The lights are not on, the door is locked, and there is a sign that says closed right behind the door. We conclude that they are closed and went to eat our lunch. We finish eating about a little over an hour later and come back to find out our car was missing, but now the bakery was open. My mum and I walk inside of the bakery and ask if they had seen our car. The owner, with a very stern tone and attitude, said, "I had it towed because it was taking up spots for potential customers. You should have come inside to ask me first." My mum responds that we did attempt to see if it was open and even buy something to see if we could park there for an hour or so. She calls us liars and said she had been open all day and we never attempted to ask. My mum just basically said that we tried and that it was wrong for her to tow us with so many other spots still available. The owner said something back to my mum that really upset her and made her cry. All while this was going on, I was taking mental notes that this pastry shop was having ventilation and insulation work being done. The insulation worker, who I can only assume was a random contractor and not a specialist, was doing the work right over the prep table for the food. And he was smoking while doing his work. As I go to console my mum, I turn around and tell the lady her sign still says closed like when we originally came to the door. She storms up to me, picks up the sign, and slams it around to open. She said, "We are open now." I calmed my mum down and we eventually got the car back from the tow company and got home. Once we got home, I was angry that the lady made my mum cry, so I wanted revenge. I called the health department for the city. I told them exactly what I had seen to the guy on the phone, who puts me on hold and tells me to repeat everything. And I repeated myself word for word to his director. I tell the director the story but nothing about the car being towed. Obviously, I was a concerned citizen. She verifies the address and location with me 3 separate times. Yes, the name was this. Yes, it was across the street from this restaurant on this street. She then tells me that she shut down that business the week prior for plumbing issues and multiple other infractions. She was told she could not be open and operate a business until the plumbing issue was fixed and approved. And the woman said she would handle it. Later that night, I found out on the local news that the business was being shut down for good for all the infractions. And I could see that my mum looked confused but happy at the same time, like karma worked for her that quickly. The next story is called, How to Destroy a Company. A bit over 6 months prior to the start of this story, we had a change at the company I worked for. The old owner was a great guy that was retiring. He was handing the company off to his son, who just came out of business school type. The son, with the mentality that the company is now his, went about restructuring. He reassigned teams to different projects and left those that remained in their old positions to pick up double, if not triple, the workload. He did this all in the name of saving a little money. I worked for the safety and engineering department and we were not spared from this effort. Unfortunately, after my initial meeting with the new boss, he took a liking to me in a really bad way. Essentially, he really liked me and wanted to go out with me, or however you want to put it. He even enlisted his friends and secretaries to help him. It went on for months and became really bad. They even made comments about me losing my late husband, that I should just get back on the horse. I kept everything, every email, every voicemail, and went to my best friend, who happens to be a really good lawyer. The friend was a contract lawyer, to be exact, so it was not exactly their area of expertise, but they knew enough to help. This friend drafted a letter to the boss, essentially a stop or we're going to start a big case over this kind of thing, and yes, everything stopped. However, I was then moved from working in office to a work from home arrangement. I knew what was coming. They were going to do their best to get rid of me, so I started documenting everything. But as luck would have it, I received an email chain from the bosses. A good friend of mine in the office who was in the email chain added me to the carbon copy list. And wouldn't you know, it was back and forth communication of them discussing how they would get rid of me and pin the blame on me. The email chain was just disgusting. They hated me so badly and wanted me gone, but because of my contract, they would have to buy me out. But being the cheapskates they are, you know, they wanted me gone for free. So the company bosses started a campaign to try and torment me. They first tried to say that because now I work from home, they were required to install cameras in my home office to make sure I was being productive. Luckily, that did not work. They also tried assigning an impossible workload to me, but luckily, my team and I were almost like family and they picked up the slack. After 3 months of this, I get an email and a phone call from the Human Resources Department saying I was getting laid off indefinitely because there was just no work for me. This was completely untrue given that we had several dozen projects we were working on. On a side note, in Ontario, there is no such thing as a layoff. Being laid off is considered an active dismissal, which is essentially the same as being fired. After this conversation with Human Resources, I call my lawyer friend, almost in tears, just shouting, "Look what they are doing to me, help." She calms me down and tells me, "This is such a good thing, we have so much evidence against them." I had already forwarded and printed everything off that was sent to me. And it was lucky I did, because a few hours after I was laid off, my computer was remotely wiped clean. Everything was gone, leaving just a blank desktop. When I called the Human Resource Department to get copies of all my filed complaints, what do you know, everything was gone. In their place was a bunch of random reprimands that never happened, that I never signed or saw. They were dating months and months back and were all signed by the new boss, despite the fact that they were dated before he ever took control of the company. It was clear they were total fakes, but I got copies of everything to add to my stack of records. I texted all my old colleagues to let them know what was happening, and that I am basically gone. Like I said earlier, we were like family, and with me on the way out, they started looking for better employment. Not only that, but they contacted all their friends who worked for the company to do the same. I was laid off on a Monday, and on Thursday, I walked into the office with my employment lawyer. I swear, the main secretary was on the phone to security the second she saw me walk in, and they were at the door in a matter of a minute. My lawyer simply handed her a legal document, a summons to meet for mediation at his office on the next Friday. During the following week, I received many calls and text messages from the bosses, his friends, secretaries, and people I knew in the office. They told me to just be friendly with the owner, to just drop it, and that they wanted to bring me back and forget about everything. As if I was going back to such a hostile work environment. Friday finally comes, and into my lawyer's office, my former boss walks in with a squad of 4 of his lawyers to settle the matter. And off the bat, he offers me 3 months severance to end all of this because I didn't have any evidence to rebut the fake paperwork they had on file. At this point, my lawyer starts to bring out all the paperwork we had, namely copies of every complaint I had ever filed, which were all signed by the bosses, Human Resources, and myself. Luckily for our case, I had made sure to take a copy of each complaint when it was written up. My lawyer made the case that in court it would be obvious that all the paperwork they had on their end were forgeries. Nothing was signed by me, and he pointed out that there were dates with the boss signature where he wasn't in the country, let alone working for the company yet. At that point, the boss and his lawyers went to speak privately. After about half an hour, they came back with a much better offer, a full year's salary. But my lawyer was like, "No, we'll just go with what the contract says plus go for damages in court." Given the recent changeover at the company, the lawyers seemed to know they couldn't afford this going to court. Not to mention it would be so bad for the company's reputation. So they basically rolled over and asked, "What do you want?" We demanded 5 years' salary plus the average bonus I would have made for each year plus all the legal fees paid. It was a big win, but it didn't end there, I wanted more. I made phone calls to several companies where I had contacts and found jobs for every member of my team and several members of other teams. By the end of a week, the company lost 10 of its most talented people. Not to mention, most of those people had friends and colleagues that ended up following them to their new employers. The fallout was pretty bad. Before all of this, they had the pick of the litter when new university students graduated. But now, because they lost almost all of their senior people, they had no one to mentor new employees. Plus word got out fast how they treat workers, so no one with any talent would even think of getting near the company. As of today, the company is just a shell of its former self. It's still big, but it rapidly loses money. They also now have a problem with permanent staffing and are paying out the nose to hire subcontractors. Let's just say they don't make money like they used to. In fact, they have not started any new projects in something like 9 months. If something isn't done on the side of management to improve things fast, they will likely be going bankrupt in the very near future. The last story is called, "Shouldn't Be Lazy at Your Jobs." This was during the time that I was working in retail. Every day, my department would get pallets of merchandise that needed to be stocked, usually after my co-workers and I would leave for the day, just before closing. I would work closing one week, opening shift the following week, and had weekends off. During that time, we would have several groups of overnight co-workers, assigned to different departments to stock merchandise, brought in on the delivery trucks. And then they put any overstock in the back, and clean up the cardboard boxes. The opening shift would take care of any overstock pallets that the overnights didn't have time to get to. Every week, each group of overnight employees would be rotated to different departments. Unfortunately, there was one group of overnight employees that had a bit of a reputation for being lazy, and those guys were assigned to my department for the week. At the time when this happened, I was working my opening shift. The wrongs being done during the week weren't so much being done to just me, it was being done to my other co-workers in my entire department. My co-workers and I get to our department to find 4 pallets of merchandise, wrapped and labeled as overstock. We double-checked the pallets and the shelves, and find out that it needed to be worked. We obviously didn't like that. By that time, the department manager and supervisor found out, and they were absolutely livid. So we ended up working the merchandise, putting them on the shelves, and when I was getting ready to start breaking down the boxes, I got this wicked idea. My idea was to stack all of the empty boxes, like they were full, wrap them up, and label them as overstock. But I wanted to get approval from my supervisor first. When I talked to my supervisor, I mentioned what I wanted to do. My supervisor chuckled at the idea, approved it, and explained what had happened to him last year. Apparently a year before, the overnight employees played a prank on him, on April 1st. They had left 2 pallets of merchandise wrapped up and labeled as overstock. He said he double-checked, only to find out that all of the boxes on the pallets were empty. He gathered all of us in the department, explained what we were doing, and we got to work. The supervisor explained that if it should happen again, we should inform him, work the merchandise, restock the empty boxes as if they are full, wrap them, label them as overstock, and leave the pallets for the overnighters. Unfortunately, my opening co-workers and I were done for the day. We were at 2 pallets. Fortunately, our closing co-workers were there when the supervisor explained what he wanted to be done. The next day, we walk in and found more pallets of overstock merchandise. The supervisor was informed, and it was basically rinse and repeat for the rest of the week. The last day of the week, however, we walk in and to our surprise, there was only 1 pallet. It had 7 pallets stacked on top of it with an angry hand-written note on it. We informed the supervisor, and he informed us that the overnight group assigned to our department was terminated by the store manager. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.